I woke up in a 5-star hotel room next to the man who would destroy my life 12 hours later. The sole accountant with the cheap glasses had just become something else entirely the night before. His hands on my skin, his promises in my ear, his access codes on my laptop. When his phone rang at dawn and his face went cold, I knew 3 things. $500,000 was missing from his company's account, the digital trail led straight to my computer, and the man I just slept with was about to have me arrested for a crime I didn't commit. Before we dive into this story of betrayal, passion, and revenge, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button right now if you've ever felt underestimated or overlooked. And subscribe because trust me, you're not going to want to miss how this ends. Now, let's get into it. The Lagos sun beat mercilessly against the floor-to-ceiling windows of a Delek Logistics executive suite, turning the glass into sheets of molten gold. Ifeanyi Adelek, Ifi to anyone brave enough to use it, stood with her back to that burning light, a silhouette carved from ambition and exhaustion. Her reflection in the polished mahogany conference table showed what 12-hour days and perfectionism could do to a woman. Sharp cheekbones that hadn't seen a proper meal in weeks, eyes that calculated faster than they dreamed, and a posture so rigidly professional it could crack under the weight of one more disappointment. The Koreans arrive in 30 minutes. Her father's voice boomed across the room like thunder announcing a storm. Chief Chukwuemeka Adelek filled doorways the way colonial architecture filled Victoria Island, imposing, immovable, and utterly convinced of its own permanence. His agbada rustled as he moved, traditional fabric wrapped around a man who'd built an empire from 3 trucks and a dream 40 years ago. Everything must be perfect, Ifeanyi. Everything asterisk. Ifi didn't turn around. She'd learned years ago that eye contact with her father was a trap. It gave him a target for disappointment. Instead, she studied the spreadsheets on her tablet, numbers that told a story her father refused to read. Adelek Logistics was hemorrhaging money. Not slowly, not quietly, but with the dramatic flair of a Nollywood death scene. "The projections are ready," she said, her voice carrying the flat efficiency of someone who'd stopped expecting praise. "I've restructured the debt schedule, renegotiated terms with 3 creditors, and identified $2.3 million in recoverable assets. If the Jumdo Group approves our partnership proposal." "If they approve," Chief Adelek's hand slammed against the table, making the crystal water glasses jump. "There is no if, Ifeanyi. This deal asterisk must close. Do you understand? Without Korean investment, this company dies. And if this company dies..." He paused, the silence heavy with unspoken threats. "I give the CEO position to Emeka, today, this afternoon, before sunset." There it was, the sword that had hung over Ifi's head for 29 years, always glinting, never quite falling. She turned slowly, finally meeting her father's eyes. They were the same shade as hers, deep brown, almost black, but where hers held calculation, his held certainty. The certainty of a man who believed God had ordained sons to inherit empires and daughters to. What? Marry well, produce grandchildren, certainly not to run logistics companies. "Emeka hasn't set foot in this office in 3 weeks, Ifi said quietly. The quietness was strategic, volume invited argument, but whispers demanded attention. "He's at Federal Palace Hotel right now, drinking Hennessy with his friends and charging it to the company account. I have the receipts." Chief Adelek's jaw tightened. For a moment, just a flickering, treacherous moment, Ifi thought she saw acknowledgement in his face. But then the moment passed, replaced by the familiar wall of tradition. "A man must be allowed to breathe before he accepts responsibility," her father said, the words coming out like a rehearsed speech. "Your brother will rise to the occasion when the weight is on his shoulders. You, Ifeanyi." He gestured vaguely at her tailored navy suit, her pulled-back hair, her tablet clutched like a shield. "You are brilliant. No father could ask for a smarter daughter, but smart women make the best advisors, not leaders. The clients, the partners, they expect to see a man at the head of the table. This is business. This is Nigeria. This is asterisk reality." Ifi's fingers tightened around her tablet until her knuckles went pale. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw her Harvard MBA certificate at his head, wanted to list every decision she'd made that had kept this company alive, while Emeka partied through his 20s like life was an extended bachelor's eve. But she'd learned this lesson too. Emotion was weakness, and weakness was evidence that women couldn't handle pressure. So instead, she nodded. "I understand, sir. The conference room is prepared. I'll make sure the Koreans see exactly what they need to see." Her father's expression softened slightly, mistaking her compliance for acceptance. "Good girl, make your father proud today. Show them you're an Adelek." He straightened his agbada and moved toward the door, then paused. "And Ifyinwa, smile more during the presentation. You have your mother's face, it's wasted on frowning." The door closed behind him, with a soft click that somehow sounded like a cell locking. Ify stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by her preparations. The presentation slides were flawless. The financial packets were organized with color-coded tabs. The refreshments, Korean green tea alongside Nigerian chin-chin, showed cultural respect. She'd even learned basic Korean greetings from YouTube videos at 2 a.m., her exhausted brain wrapping around foreign syllables while the rest of Lagos slept. Everything must be perfect. She walked to the window and looked down at Victoria Island's chaos. Danfos weaving through traffic like metallic fish, street vendors selling everything from phone chargers to plantain chips, and the occasional luxury car that cost more than most Nigerians earned in a lifetime. Somewhere in that chaos was Emeka, probably working on his third drink, blissfully unaware that his sister was fighting to save his inheritance while he spent it. "Miss Adelek," her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The Korean delegation has arrived. They're coming up now." Ify checked her reflection one final time in the darkened screen of her tablet. She'd worn her most conservative suit, navy blue, high-necked, paired with modest heels. Her natural hair was pulled into a tight bun that gave her a headache but conveyed professionalism. Her makeup was minimal, just enough to look polished, not enough to look like she'd tried. Even her jewelry was calculated, small gold studs, a simple watch, nothing that could be called frivolous. She was 29 years old, and had spent her entire life auditioning for a role she'd never be cast in. The conference room doors opened. The Korean delegation entered like a military formation, precise, coordinated, and utterly intimidating. There were 6 of them, all men, all wearing identical black suits that probably cost more than Ify's monthly salary. They moved with the kind of confidence that came from representing serious money, the kind of money that could buy companies like Adelek Logistics without checking the receipt. Leading them was a man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Miss Adelek," he said in accented but perfect English. "I am Mr. Kang, representing the Jumdo Group. Thank you for receiving us." Ify bowed slightly, not too deep, not too shallow. She'd researched Korean business etiquette until her eyes burned. "Mr. Kang, welcome. We're honored by your visit. Please sit. May I offer you refreshment?" As the delegation settled around the table, Ify's eyes skipped across their faces, cataloging details the way she cataloged numbers. Mr. Kang was clearly the spokesman, his posture, his position at the head of the table, the way others deferred to him. The 4 men flanking him were obviously security or advisors, their eyes constantly scanning, their hands never far from their jacket pockets. But it was the 6th man who caught her attention. He sat at the far end of the table, slightly apart from the others, and everything about him screamed, not important. His suit was off the rack, probably from a department store rather than a tailor. He wore thick-framed glasses that kept sliding down his nose. His hair was slightly too long, falling across his forehead in a way that suggested he'd forgotten his last haircut. And while the others sat with perfect posture, he hunched over a leather-bound ledger scribbling notes with a mechanical pencil. The accountant, Ify assumed. Every powerful delegation had one, the numbers guy who stayed quiet during negotiations and only spoke when someone needed to know if they could afford something. She dismissed him and focused on Mr. Kang. "Shall we begin?" Ify moved to the presentation screen, her tablet syncing seamlessly with the display. Adelek Logistics has been Nigeria's premier shipping and distribution company for 40 years. We maintain relationships with every major port from Lagos to Calabar and our trucking fleet. Miss Adelek, Mr. Kang's interruption was polite but firm. We have read your company's promotional materials. They are very impressive, very optimistic. His smile widened, still not reaching his eyes. But Jumdo Group does not invest based on what companies say about themselves. We invest based on what the numbers say, and your numbers. He made a theatrical gesture of concern. They tell a different story, yes. Ai-Fi felt her father tense beside her. Chief Adelek had insisted on attending the meeting, sitting in the corner like a nervous parent at a child's piano recital. She could feel his anxiety from across the room, could sense him mentally drafting the speech he'd give Emeka when he handed over the CEO title. Not today, asterisk, she thought fiercely. Not like this. You're absolutely right, Mr. Kang. Ai-Fi's voice remained steady even as she pivoted the presentation. Let's talk about the real numbers, may I? She pulled up a different set of slides, the ones she'd prepared for this exact moment. Raw data, unflinching honesty. The spreadsheets showed losses, debt, and declining market share in vivid red. Her father made a strangled sound. But Ai-Fi continued, her voice gaining strength. Yes, we've lost money for 3 consecutive quarters. Yes, our debt-to-asset ratio is concerning. And yes, without significant restructuring, Adelek Logistics will not survive another 2 years. She clicked to the next slide. But here's what those numbers don't show. We have infrastructure that our competitors would kill for. We have relationships with port authorities that took 4 decades to build. We have brand recognition across West Africa. What we don't have is modern management systems, technological integration, or access to international shipping networks, which is exactly what Jumdo Group specializes in. She pulled up a projection model, one she'd spent 3 sleepless nights creating. With a $5 million investment and a partnership structure that gives Jumdo 40% equity, I project we can return to profitability within 18 months and double our current valuation within 5 years. This isn't a bailout, Mr. Kang. It's arbitrage. You're buying a distressed asset with massive upside at a fraction of what it would cost to build this infrastructure from scratch. The room fell silent. Mr. Kang studied the projections, his expression unreadable. The other Koreans whispered among themselves in rapid Korean. Ai-Fi caught a few words. She'd learned enough to recognize numbers and business terms, and they seemed engaged, interested. Then the accountant at the end of the table looked up from his ledger. Your debt restructuring timeline assumes the Central Bank of Nigeria maintains current interest rates, he said quietly. His English was flawless, barely accented, and his voice had a quality that made everyone automatically turn to listen. But CBN policy has been volatile for 3 years. If rates increase even 2 percentage points, your 18-month projection becomes a 30-month projection. At which point, the company will have burned through the entire $5 million investment without achieving profitability. Yes. Ai-Fi blinked. The question was technical, specific, and devastatingly accurate. This wasn't a simple accountant. This was someone who'd actually read and understood every page of the financial disclosure documents she'd sent. That's a valid concern, Ai-Fi said carefully, her mind racing through possible responses. Which is why I've structured the debt schedule with variable rate hedges. We've pre-negotiated rate caps with our 3 primary creditors. If CBN raises rates, we're protected for the first 3 years of the restructuring period. The accountant tilted his head slightly, like a professor examining a student's unexpected correct answer. And what did these rate caps cost you in fees? 3/4 of a percentage point on each loan. So you've effectively increased your interest expense by 0.75% across $8 million in debt to protect against a rate increase that may never happen. Yes. That's $60,000 per year in insurance against a hypothetical scenario. That's $60,000 per year in insurance against bankruptcy, Mr. Ai-Fi paused, realizing she didn't know his name. Park, he said softly, pushing his glasses up his nose. You can call me Mr. Park. Mr. Park? Ai-Fi felt something strange happening in her chest, a flutter of excitement that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with finally having someone in the room who understood the game she was playing. You're right that rate hedges are expensive, but in emerging markets, volatility is the only certainty. I'd rather pay for protection I don't need than need protection I didn't buy. The downside of being wrong is catastrophic. The cost of being right is manageable. For the first time since entering the room, Mr. Park smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a tiny quirk at the corner of his mouth, but it transformed his face entirely. Behind those glasses, his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and suddenly very, very focused on her. "Interesting," he murmured, making a note in his ledger. Mr. Kang cleared his throat, clearly annoyed that his accountant had stolen the spotlight. "Miss Adelek, these are all good answers to good questions, but Jumdo Group has concerns beyond just numbers. We need to know about leadership stability, succession planning." His eyes flicked meaningfully toward Chief Adelek. "Your father is, forgive me, not a young man who will run this company in 5 years, in 10. This was it, the moment Ifai had been dreading. Her father stood up, his agbada rustling with authority. "Mr. Kang, that is an excellent question. Allow me to." "I will." Ifai's voice cut through the room like a knife through silk. She looked directly at Mr. Kang, then at Mr. Park, then at each member of the delegation in turn. "I will run this company. I have an MBA from Harvard Business School, 8 years of hands-on operational experience, and I'm the person who's kept Adelek Logistics alive for the past 3 years while we've navigated currency devaluation, port strikes, and an oil crisis. Succession planning isn't a concern, Mr. Kang. It's already solved." Her father's face went purple. "Ifianwa." But Mr. Kang was nodding slowly, looking between father and daughter with the expression of a man watching a fascinating cultural performance. "I see. Very modern, very progressive." He stood, and the rest of the delegation immediately stood with him. "Miss Adelek, Chief Adelek, thank you for your time. Jumdo Group will deliberate and provide our decision within 1 week. Mr. Park will remain in Lagos to conduct additional due diligence on your facilities and records. Please provide him with complete access." "Of course," Ifai managed to say, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Complete access meant they were seriously considering the investment, but it also meant 1 week of invasive auditing, of having every decision she'd ever made scrutinized by someone who clearly knew how to find weaknesses in financial structures. The delegation filed out, Mr. Kang leading the way with the same military precision they'd entered with. The security guards followed. Mr. Park gathered his ledger and mechanical pencils with slow, methodical movements, as if he had all the time in the world. As he passed Ifai's seat, he paused. "Your rate hedge strategy," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "It's smart, risk-averse but not cowardly. Most MBA graduates are taught to maximize returns. Very few are taught to minimize catastrophe. You learned the more valuable lesson." Then he was gone, leaving Ifai staring after him with a strange, unsettled feeling in her chest. The conference room door had barely closed before her father exploded. "What were you thinking?" Chief Adelek's voice shook the crystal glasses still sitting on the table. "You told them you would run this company. You, Ifianwa, have you lost your senses? Do you know what you've done?" Ifai turned to face him slowly, exhaustion and anger finally overwhelming her careful professional mask. "I told them the truth. I do run this company, Daddy. I have been running it while a mecha drinks and you pretend not to notice. Those Koreans aren't stupid. They can read a balance sheet. They know that whoever salvaged this company from complete collapse wasn't you and certainly wasn't a mecha. So yes, I told them it was me, because it was *me. You have embarrassed me," her father said, each word dropping like a stone. "You have embarrassed your brother. You have embarrassed this family's legacy. A woman cannot." "A woman has." Ifai grabbed her tablet and her portfolio, her hands shaking with suppressed fury. "A woman has saved your legacy while your son spent it, and if the Koreans approve this deal, it will be because a woman convinced them we're worth saving. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Mr. Park will be here tomorrow for his audit, and I need to prepare." She walked out before her father could respond, her heels clicking against marble floors with the rhythm of barely controlled rage. She didn't look back. If she looked back, she might see the disappointment in his eyes, and if she saw that disappointment one more time, she might actually break. Her office was a glass box overlooking Victoria Island's commercial district. From here, she could see the whole chaotic ecosystem of Lagos business. The banks, the trading companies, the shipping offices, and beyond them, the harbor where container ships floated like steel whales. This was her kingdom, not a corner office in her father's company, her own empire of efficiency and excellence, carved out one spreadsheet at a time. Ify collapsed into her chair and let her head fall back against the leather. Her phone buzzed, probably her father, probably ready to continue the argument, but she ignored it. Instead, she pulled up the file she'd created on Joomdo Group. The public information was impressive but vague. A South Korean conglomerate specializing in international shipping, logistics, and business facilitation, whatever that meant. Revenue in the billions. Operations across Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. But there was something strange about how little information existed about the company's leadership structure. No CEO photos, no press releases, just a corporate website that looked professional but revealed nothing. And then there was Mr. Park. She'd seen the way the other Koreans deferred to him, subtle but unmistakable. The way Mr. Kang had waited for his nod before ending the meeting. The way his questions had cut through her presentation like a scalpel, finding the exact weak points she'd hoped no one would notice. That was not a simple accountant. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. Miss Adelek, this is Park Jae-hoon. Mr. Kang asked me to schedule tomorrow's audit. Would 9 a.m. be acceptable? Also, I apologize if my questions were too direct during the meeting. In Korea, we believe directness is a sign of respect. I hope I did not offend. P. Ify stared at the message, surprised by its tone. The man who'd calmly dissected her financial strategy was now apologizing for potentially causing offense. It felt genuine, unexpected. She typed back, *9 a.m. is fine, and no offense taken. I appreciate directness too. Good questions keep me sharp. IA. The response came almost immediately. Then I will bring very good questions tomorrow. Have a pleasant evening. Despite everything, the fight with her father, the stress of the presentation, the anxiety about the investment, Ify found herself smiling at her phone like a schoolgirl with a crush. Then she shook her head firmly. This was ridiculous. Mr. Park was here to audit her company, possibly to find reasons not to invest. He was professional, polite, and clearly brilliant with numbers. That didn't mean anything except that tomorrow's audit would be thorough. Still, as she gathered her things and prepared to leave the office, she caught herself wondering what kind of questions Mr. Park would bring, and whether he'd smile at her answers again, that tiny quirk at the corner of his mouth that somehow made her feel like she'd won a prize. Focus *, she told herself firmly. This is business. This is your father's company. This is your last chance to prove you deserve to run it. But as she walked to her car, a modest Honda that she'd bought herself, refusing to use company funds for luxury, she couldn't quite shake the memory of Mr. Park's eyes behind those glasses. Sharp, intelligent, and looking at her like she was a puzzle worth solving. Tomorrow would be interesting. The next morning, Ify arrived at the office at 7 a.m., 2 hours before Mr. Park's scheduled audit. She'd barely slept, her mind cycling through possible questions he might ask, weaknesses he might find, and strategies for defending decisions she'd made under pressure. Her navy suit from yesterday had been replaced with charcoal gray, equally professional but somehow more confident. She'd even worn the small diamond studs her mother had left her, a tiny rebellion against the conservative image she usually projected. The office was quiet at this hour, just the cleaning staff and a few dedicated employees who'd arrived early to impress the Korean auditor. Ify made herself a cup of strong Nigerian coffee, none of the fancy espresso her father kept for clients, just simple instant coffee with condensed milk, and settled at her desk to review the files one more time. At exactly 8:45 a.m. her assistant called. Miss Adelek, Mr. Park is here, he's very early. Send him to the conference room. I'll be right there. I-Fi took a moment to check her reflection in the darkened window. Professional, composed, ready. Then she grabbed the thick binders of documentation she'd prepared and headed to meet him. Mr. Park stood in the conference room, but he looked different from yesterday. The ill-fitting suit was gone, replaced by dark jeans, a crisp white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows and no glasses. Without the thick frames, his face was striking, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that were even more intense than she'd remembered. His hair was pushed back, revealing a face that belonged in a Korean drama, not an accounting office. He looked younger, stronger, and significantly more attractive than any accountant had a right to be. "Miss Adelek," he bowed slightly, and she noticed he moved with a grace that suggested physical training, martial arts, maybe, or dance. "Thank you for accommodating my early arrival. I find I work better before the day becomes chaotic." "I'm the same way," I-Fi admitted, setting down her binders. "The office is quieter at dawn. You can actually think." "Exactly." That small smile again. "Thinking is important in our line of work." "Our line of work?" I-Fi raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize auditing and operations management were the same line." "They're not, but we both deal in truth hidden inside numbers." Mr. Park pulled out a laptop, high-end, clearly expensive, and opened it with the smooth efficiency of someone who lived behind a screen. Numbers lie to most people, but to someone who knows how to read them, they tell stories. Love stories, betrayals, tragedies, your company's numbers. He looked up at her, and there was something almost sympathetic in his gaze. They tell a story of someone fighting, very hard, to save something that's bleeding out. The bluntness stole I-Fi's breath, not because it was cruel, it wasn't, but because it was so perfectly, devastatingly accurate. "Yes," she said simply. "That's exactly what they tell. The question is whether the patient can be saved or if we're just delaying the inevitable." "That depends on the surgeon." Mr. Park gestured to the seat across from him. "May I ask you questions that are not in the official audit?" "Personal questions." "Contextual questions. The numbers only tell part of the story. I need to understand the rest." I-Fi hesitated, then sat down. Something about the way he asked, straightforward, no games, made her want to answer honestly. "Okay, but I get to ask you questions too." His smile widened slightly. "Fair." "Why are you really here?" I-Fi leaned forward. "And don't say to audit the company. You're not a regular accountant. Yesterday, every person in that delegation deferred to you, including Mr. Kang. So who are you really, Mr. Park?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he closed his laptop and looked at her with an expression that was part admiration, part calculation. "You're observant," he said. "Most people see the glasses and the ledger and assume I'm invisible. Most people are idiots." He laughed, a real laugh this time, not just a smile. It transformed his face, making him look younger and somehow more dangerous at the same time. "Yes, they are. Okay, Miss Adelek. Honesty for honesty. I'm here because Jumdo Group has invested in 47 companies in 12 countries, and 32 of those companies were bleeding money when we found them. Do you know how many are still losing money after our partnership?" "How many?" "0. His eyes locked onto hers. "We don't invest in failures. We identify companies with good bones and bad management, and we fix them. Sometimes the fix is gentle, new systems, better leadership, strategic partnerships. Sometimes the fix is surgical. We remove the rot and rebuild from scratch. Your company has good bones, Miss Adelek, very good bones, but there is rot here. I need to know if you're part of the structure or part of the disease." The question should have offended her. Instead, it energized her. "I'm the only thing keeping this structure standing," I-Fi said, her voice low and fierce. "My father built this company on handshake deals and personal relationships. That worked 30 years ago. It doesn't work now. We need systems, technology, international partnerships. But every time I propose modernization, I'm told I'm being too Western or too aggressive or too much like a man. Do you know what it's like to have the solution and be ignored because of what's between your legs instead of what's between your ears?" Mr. Park's expression softened. "No, But I know what it's like to have the solution and be ignored because of where you come from, how young you are, or who your family is. Power structures protect themselves, Miss Adelek. They don't change voluntarily. They have to be forced to change. And that's what you do, force change. When necessary. He opened his laptop again, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Show me your real books, not the sanitized versions you sent to Mr. Kang. I want to see the actual operational data. Cash flow, employee turnover, vendor payment delays, everything. I-Fi felt a spike of panic. The real books showed just how close to collapse they actually were. Payroll delays, creditors threatening legal action, and that one payment to a port official that definitely violated international anti-corruption laws. If Mr. Park saw everything, he'd recommend against the investment. But something in his eyes told her that lying would be worse. She pulled out a different binder, the one she'd kept hidden under the official documents. This is everything. The good, the bad, and the potentially illegal. If you're going to walk away, at least do it with full information. Mr. Park took the binder and started flipping through pages, his expression unreadable. Minutes passed, then more minutes. I-Fi felt like she was waiting for a judge to read a verdict that would determine the rest of her life. Finally, he looked up. You paid a customs official $30,000 to expedite a delayed shipment. Yes. That's a bribe. That's how business works in Lagos. The shipment was medicine for a hospital. If I hadn't paid, people would have died waiting for antibiotics that were sitting in a warehouse because of bureaucratic delays. Does your father know? My father doesn't want to know. He wants the business to run, and he wants to pretend it runs on integrity and prayer. But prayer doesn't clear customs, Mr. Park. He made a note in his ledger. You're pragmatic. I'm desperate. There's a difference. Is there? He tilted his head, studying her like she was a particularly interesting equation. Desperation makes people reckless. Pragmatism requires clear thinking. You chose to pay a bribe knowing it was illegal, but judging it was necessary. That's not desperation. That's a calculated decision to accept moral compromise for operational survival. It's actually quite cold-blooded. Thank you. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. He closed the binder. Here's what I see. A competent operator trapped in a dying company by a father who won't let go and a brother who's worthless. You've done everything right, education, experience, strategic thinking. But you're losing because the game is rigged. You can't win when the rules say you're not allowed to play. Tears pricked at I-Fi's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. Crying in front of an auditor was not acceptable. Crying in front of anyone was weakness. But hearing someone see asterisk her, actually see the trap she was in, felt like being acknowledged for the first time in her life. So what do I do? She asked quietly. You change the rules. Mr. Park stood up and walked to the window, looking down at Lagos's morning chaos. Or you walk away and build something that's yours, because this company will never be yours, Miss Adelek. Not while your father lives, not while tradition matters more than competence. You can save it, certainly. You can make it profitable, efficient, successful. But at the end, your father will give it to your brother anyway, because that's what tradition demands. Is that how you want to spend your life? Saving something that will never belong to you. The question hung in the air like smoke. I-Fi joined him at the window. They stood side by side, two people looking at the same chaotic city from inside their different cages. I don't know how to walk away, she admitted. This company is all I've ever known. My father is all I've ever tried to please. Then maybe it's time to learn. Mr. Park turned to face her, and suddenly the space between them felt very small. Have dinner with me tonight. I-Fi's brain short-circuited. What? Dinner, food, conversation that's not about audits or financial restructuring. His expression was serious, but his eyes held a hint of warmth. You've spent the morning answering my questions about your company. I'd like to spend the evening learning about you. The person, not the operator. Mr. Park, I don't think that's appropriate. You're right, it's not appropriate at all. He smiled, and this time it was full, genuine, warm, and devastating. But I'm going to do it anyway. And I think you want to say yes, even though your professional instincts are screaming at you to refuse. So here's what I'll do. I'll finish my audit today. I'll write my report. And tonight at 8 p.m. I'll be at Shiro Restaurant in Victoria Island. If you come, we have dinner. If you don't, I'll understand that the answer is no, and tomorrow we'll return to being strictly professional. Either way, the audit results won't change. I don't mix business decisions with personal feelings. That's bribery, Ifai said, but her heart was racing. That's an invitation. There's a difference. He packed up his laptop and tucked the ledger under his arm. 8 p.m., Shiro, I'll reserve a quiet table. Then he walked out, leaving Ifai standing alone by the window, her reflection showing a woman who looked surprised, flustered, and despite every rational objection, her brain was screaming, slightly excited. She had 8 hours to decide if she was brave enough to say yes. Ifai changed outfits 4 times. The first choice, her reliable black pencil dress, looked like she was attending a funeral. The second, a bright yellow Ankara print, screamed trying too hard. The third made her look like she was going to church. By the 4th attempt, she was standing in her bedroom in just her underwear, staring at her closet like it had personally betrayed her. This is ridiculous, she muttered to her reflection. It's just dinner, professional dinner, with a man who's auditing your company and somehow looks like he stepped out of a Korean drama and definitely knows more than he's saying, and... She cut herself off. Talking to herself was a sign of either genius or insanity, and right now she wasn't sure which category she fell into. Finally, she settled on a deep burgundy wrap dress, elegant but not formal, fitted but not provocative, sophisticated without trying too hard. She left her hair down for once, natural curls framing her face in a way that felt both vulnerable and powerful, minimal jewelry, a touch more makeup than usual, and her favorite perfume, something her mother had worn, vanilla and sandalwood, memory and promise mixed together. As her Uber wound through Lagos traffic toward Victoria Island, Ifai's phone buzzed with messages. Dad, asterisk, where are you? We need to discuss your behavior yesterday. Emeka, asterisk, hope you're happy. Dad's talking about cutting your authority. Way to ruin everything for both of us, sis. She turned off her phone. Shiro Restaurant was exactly the kind of place Ifai had seen on Instagram but never actually visited. All dark wood, paper lanterns, and an ambience that whispered expense account in 3 languages. The hostess took one look at her and smiled knowingly. Miss Adelek, Mr. Park is waiting for you. This way, please. He'd reserved a private corner booth, tucked away from the main dining room behind a decorative screen that provided the illusion of intimacy. Mr. Park stood as she approached, and Ifai had to remind herself to breathe. He'd transformed again. Gone were the accountant glasses and the casual jeans. Now he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit with a black shirt underneath, no tie, the top button undone in a way that suggested carefully calculated casualness. His hair was styled back, revealing the full impact of his face, those sharp cheekbones, the strong jaw, and eyes that tracked her movement with an intensity that made her skin feel warm. You came, he said simply, and something in his voice suggested he'd actually been uncertain. I almost didn't, Ifai admitted, sliding into the booth. This is wildly inappropriate. Yes. He sat across from her, close enough in the intimate space that she could smell his cologne, something crisp and expensive that probably had words like oud and bergamot in the description. Would you like me to apologize for that? Would you mean it? Not even slightly. Despite herself, Ifai laughed. There was something refreshing about his directness, the way he said things other people would dance around. Fine, then I won't apologize for accepting. A waiter appeared, and Mr. Park ordered in Japanese, fluid, confident, clearly fluent. When he'd finished, he looked at Ifai. I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of ordering the omakase menu. The chef here is exceptional, but if you have preferences or restrictions. I trust you, Ifai said, then immediately wondered why she'd said it. She didn't trust easily. Couldn't afford to. But something about the way he'd asked, leaving room for her to object, made her want to see what he'd choose. That's dangerous, Mr. Park said quietly. Trusting someone you barely know. Is it? You trusted me with the truth this morning. about seeing through the rot in my company, about understanding that I'm trapped. That's not standard auditor behavior. No, he agreed, it's not. The first course arrived, delicate slices of yellowtail with jalapeno and a ponzu sauce that tasted like summer. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, and Ifai realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd actually enjoyed a meal instead of just consuming fuel between meetings. Tell me about Harvard, Mr. Park said, setting down his chopsticks. What made you choose business school? My father told me I should become a lawyer, Ifai said. Or a doctor, something respectable for a woman. I chose business specifically because he said it wasn't for me. Rebellion disguised as ambition. And did it work? Did you prove him wrong? I proved that I could excel at something he said I couldn't do, whether that changed his mind. She shrugged. You met him yesterday. Traditional men don't change their minds. They just find new reasons to justify their original position. Your brother, Mr. Park said carefully. Tell me about him. Ifai felt her jaw tighten. What did the audit reveal? That he has access to company accounts he shouldn't touch, withdrawal patterns that suggest personal use of corporate funds, and an employment record that's best described as aggressively minimal. But numbers only tell part of the story. What's he like as a person? Charming, Ifai said, the word tasting bitter. Everyone loves Emeka. He's funny, sociable, generous with money he didn't earn. He tells our father what he wants to hear, that he'll marry a nice Nigerian girl, produce grandchildren, run the company exactly the way our grandfather did. Meanwhile, I'm the difficult one, the one who asks uncomfortable questions and suggests uncomfortable changes. Do you hate him? The question was so direct that Ifai nearly choked on her wine. That's a complicated question. Is it? She set down her glass and really considered it. No, she said finally. I don't hate him, I pity him. Emeka knows he's not qualified to run the company, knows I'm better at every aspect of the business. But he also knows that tradition is on his side, so he doesn't have to try. And that's made him lazy, entitled. He's living a life scripted by someone else's expectations, just like I am. The difference is his script has a guaranteed happy ending. Does it? Mr. Park's eyes were thoughtful. A man who inherits power he didn't earn is a man who can lose it very easily. Your brother may win the company, Miss Adelek, but winning something and deserving it are very different things. And people who don't deserve what they have spent their whole lives afraid someone will take it away. The next course arrived, perfectly seared toro, fatty tuna that melted on the tongue. Ifai noticed Mr. Park had barely touched his food, too focused on her to eat. Your turn, she said. Tell me about you. Who is Park Jae-hoon when he's not auditing struggling African logistics companies? Something flickered across his face, amusement, maybe, or caution. What do you want to know? Everything, where you're from, how you ended up working for Jumdo Group, why you're really in Lagos. She leaned forward. And don't give me the official story. I want the truth. He was quiet for a long moment, and Ifai thought he might deflect or change the subject. But then he took a sip of his sake and began to speak. I grew up in Seoul, Gangnam District before it was fashionable, when it was just another crowded neighborhood full of people trying to make enough money to survive. My father was a fisherman. My mother cleaned offices at night. I was good at math, so they sacrificed everything to send me to better schools. I studied obsessively, got into Seoul National University, graduated top of my class in economics. He paused. And then I discovered that degrees don't matter as much as connections. The good jobs went to people whose fathers knew the right people. I was brilliant and broke and angry. So what did you do? I got noticed by someone who valued talent over pedigree, someone who gave me opportunities that traditional businesses wouldn't, and I spent the next 15 years learning how power actually works, not the way they teach it in universities, but the way it operates in the real world. Money, influence, strategic relationships, the willingness to do what others won't. There was something almost dangerous in the way he said it, like he was confessing to something without quite nomming it. And now you audit companies for Jumdo Group. Among other things. What other things? Things that are better discussed when we know each other better. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Let's say I help facilitate complex business transitions. Sometimes that means auditing. Sometimes it means more creative solutions. Ify should have been alarmed. Instead, she felt a strange thrill of recognition. Here was someone else who understood that the official rules were often just window dressing for the real game happening underneath. The main courses came and went. Wagyu beef so tender it barely needed chewing, lobster prepared 3 ways, seasonal vegetables that tasted like they'd been harvested that morning. With each course, the conversation deepened. Mr. Park asked about her time at Harvard, and Ify found herself telling stories she'd never shared with anyone. About being one of only 3 Nigerians in her program, about racist comments disguised as curiosity, about the loneliness of being brilliant in a place that treated her like an exotic specimen. In return, he told her about Seoul, the pressure cooker of Korean society, where your university determined your entire life trajectory, where failure meant family shame, where he'd watched his father work himself into an early grave for a business that collapsed in the Asian financial crisis. He died believing he'd failed us, Mr. Park said quietly, staring at his empty sake cup. Died thinking he should have done more, earned more, been more. And I stood at his funeral and promised myself I would never let anyone make me feel that small again, that I would build power that couldn't be taken away. Did you? Ify asked softly. Yes. He looked up, and his eyes were hard now, crystalline with certainty. I built an empire, not the kind with my name on buildings, but the kind that controls the buildings with other people's names. Real power is invisible, Miss Adelek. It's the ability to make things happen without anyone knowing you were involved. That sounds lonely. It is. His expression softened. Which is why I'm here, having dinner with a woman who sees through me with uncomfortable clarity. You asked earlier if I would apologize for inviting you. The truth is, I invited you because I haven't had a genuine conversation in years. Everyone I meet wants something, partnership, protection. Profit, but you... He reached across the table and his fingers brushed hers, a touch so light it could have been accidental. You don't want anything from me except honesty. That's rare, it's precious, and it's exactly what I needed. Ify's heart was hammering. His hand was still near hers on the table, close enough to touch, and every nerve in her body was screaming at her to either pull away or close the distance. She closed the distance. Their fingers intertwined, and the touch was electric, not because it was sexual, but because it was real asterisk. 2 people who spent their lives wearing masks, finally lowering them enough to make contact. I should tell you something, Ify said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've never done this before. Had dinner. Let myself feel something during a business negotiation. Let myself want something besides success. Let myself, she took a breath. Let myself imagine that maybe there's more to life than trying to earn my father's approval. Mr. Park's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. What if I told you that your father's approval is worthless? That you're chasing something that will never satisfy you because it's not actually what you need? What do I need? To be seen, acknowledged, valued for exactly who you are, not who someone thinks you should become. His eyes locked onto hers. I see you, Ifyenwa Adelek. I see your brilliance, your strength, and the cage you've built around yourself out of duty and fear. And I'm telling you that you don't have to live in that cage. You can walk out any time you choose. And go where? Anywhere you want. His grip on her hand tightened slightly. I could help you, if you wanted. I could make your brother's embezzlement visible, could structure the Jumdo investment so you have actual power, not just responsibility. Could build you a path to independence that doesn't require your father's blessing. I have resources, connections, and frankly, I'm good at destroying obstacles. Say the word, and I'll clear every barrier in your path. It was the most seductive offer Ify had ever received. Not flowers or jewelry, but power, real power, the kind that could change her life. Why, she asked, why would you do that for me? Because I recognize something in you that I see in myself. Hunger. Not for money or status, but for freedom to be excellent without apologizing for it. And because, he paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Because I'm tired of being alone at the top of my mountain, and you're the first person I've met who I think could stand next to me without either kneeling or trying to push me off." The waiter appeared to clear their plates, and the spell broke slightly. Mr. Park released her hand and sat back, his professional mask sliding partially back into place. "It's getting late. Can I drive you home?" "I took an Uber." "Then let me take you. I have a car." They left the restaurant together, and the Lagos night wrapped around them like velvet, warm, humid, alive with the sounds of a city that never truly slept. Mr. Park's car turned out to be a sleek black Mercedes with tinted windows and leather seats that probably cost more than Ifai's annual salary. But instead of heading toward her apartment in Ikoyi, Mr. Park drove toward the Eco Signature Hotel. "This isn't the way to my place," Ifai said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I know," he glanced at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "I have a suite at Eco Signature, top floor, private, secure, I thought. If you wanted, we could have a drink, continue talking, no pressure. But the hotel has better wine than most Lagos apartments and the view is spectacular." Ifai knew what he was really asking, knew that accepting this invitation meant crossing a line from professional to personal, from business to pleasure. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. He was auditing her company. Her future depended on his recommendation. This could destroy everything she'd worked for. But another part of her, the part that had been locked away for 29 years, starved of anything that wasn't duty or obligation, whispered that maybe, just maybe, she deserved one night of freedom. One night where she wasn't Chief Adelek's daughter or Adelek Logistics' unofficial CEO. One night where she was just Ifai, a woman having drinks with a fascinating man who saw her for who she actually was. "Just a drink," she said carefully. "Just a drink," he agreed, but there was promise in his eyes. The suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos's glittering skyline, minimalist furniture that screamed expensive taste, and a bottle of wine chilling in a silver bucket, as if he'd known she would say yes. Mr. Park poured them each a glass, something French and red that probably cost more than her car, and they stood together at the window, looking out at the city that had shaped them both. "It's beautiful from up here," Ifai said. "You can't see the chaos, just the lights." "That's the lie wealth tells," Mr. Park said quietly. "That elevation equals escape, but the chaos is still there. You've just put distance between yourself and the consequences." "Is that what you've done? Put distance between yourself and consequences?" He turned to face her, setting down his wine glass. "I've done things I'm not proud of, Miss Adelek, things that were necessary but not good. I've hurt people to protect others. I've broken rules to enforce different rules. I've built power on foundations that wouldn't survive moral scrutiny." He stepped closer. "But I've never lied about who I am, and I'm not lying now when I tell you that tonight, this moment with you, is the most honest I've felt in years." Ifai set down her own glass. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline and wine and desire mixing into something that made her brave. "Mr. Park." "Jaehoon," he interrupted softly. "When we're alone, call me Jaehoon." "Jaehoon." The name felt foreign and intimate on her tongue. "I should leave. This is complicated and messy and could ruin everything." "Yes, it could. And I'm not the kind of woman who does this, who goes to hotel rooms with men she barely knows." "I know. So why can't I make myself walk away?" He reached out and cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek with devastating tenderness. "Because you're tired of being good, Ifyanwa, tired of doing everything right and getting nothing in return. And tonight, in this room, you can be something other than dutiful. You can be free." She kissed him. Or maybe he kissed her. Later, she wouldn't be able to remember who moved first, only that suddenly his mouth was on hers, and it felt like coming home and running away all at once. He tasted like wine and promises, and his hands found her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space between them. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against her lips. "Tell me this is a bad idea and we should maintain professional boundaries." "It is a bad idea," Ifai breathed. "The worst possible idea." "Then tell me to stop." Instead, she reached up and loosened his tie, her fingers fumbling slightly with the knot. I spent my whole life doing what I was told, making the smart choice, being responsible. The tie came free and she dropped it to the floor. Tonight, I'm choosing something just for me. Jae-hoon's control, which had seemed absolute throughout dinner, finally cracked. He lifted her easily. She made a surprised sound and wrapped her legs around his waist and carried her toward the bedroom. The suite was massive, all dark wood and soft lighting, but Ai-Fi barely registered the details. She was too focused on the way Jae-hoon looked at her, like she was something precious and dangerous and entirely his. He set her down beside the bed, his hands finding the tie of her wrap dress. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with barely restrained want. "Once we cross this line." "I'm sure." Ai-Fi's hands went to his shirt buttons, working them open with shaking fingers. "Stop asking me if I'm sure and just—" He kissed her again, harder this time, swallowing her words. His hands made quick work of her dress, the burgundy fabric pooling at her feet. Ai-Fi felt exposed, vulnerable, powerful. She'd never been looked at the way Jae-hoon was looking at her now, with hunger, yes, but also with something close to reverence. "You're beautiful," he said simply, and somehow it didn't sound like a line, just a statement of fact. "So are you," Ai-Fi replied, pushing his shirt off his shoulders. His body was lean and muscled, evidence of training or discipline or both. There were scars, too, a thin white line across his ribs, another on his shoulder, stories written in skin that she wanted to read. They fell onto the bed together, a tangle of limbs and gasping breaths. Jae-hoon took his time, mapping her body with his hands and mouth like he was memorizing her. Every touch was deliberate, controlled, designed to pull sounds from her throat that she didn't know she could make. "Stop holding back," he murmured against her neck. "I want to hear you, want to know what makes you feel good." So Ai-Fi stopped being quiet, stopped being controlled. For the first time in her life, she let herself be loud and messy and entirely present in her body instead of her head. When Jae-hoon's fingers found her most sensitive spots, she arched against him, gasping his name. When he asked what she wanted, she told him, no embarrassment, no apology, just honest desire. "Like this?" he asked, his fingers moving in slow, deliberate circles. "Yes, God, yes, exactly like that." He smiled against her skin, pleased by her responsiveness. "You're so tense," he observed, working tension from her muscles even as he built pleasure. "Always thinking, always planning. Let go, Ifyinwa. Just for tonight, let go of everything except this." And she did. When he finally moved over her, positioning himself between her thighs, he paused one more time. "Protection." "IUD," Ai-Fi managed. I have. "I'm clean, tested regularly, but if you want me to." "I trust you." Those 3 words seemed to affect him more than anything else. His eyes darkened, and when he pushed inside her, it felt like more than just physical connection. It felt like recognition, 2 people who'd spent their lives isolated finally finding someone who understood. They moved together, finding a rhythm that was neither gentle nor rushed, but intense, purposeful. Jae-hoon kept his eyes open, watching her face, adjusting his angle and pace based on her reactions. When Ai-Fi's breathing hitched, he slowed down. When she dug her nails into his back, he went deeper. "More," she demanded, surprised by her own boldness. "Greedy," he teased, but he gave her what she wanted, shifting his weight and changing the angle until she cried out. "Jae-hoon, I know, I can feel it. Let go, I've got you." And she did, pleasure crashing over her in waves that left her shaking and gasping his name. Jae-hoon followed moments later, his control finally breaking as he buried his face in her neck, his body going rigid before collapsing against her. For a long moment, they lay tangled together, hearts racing, skin slick with sweat. Jae-hoon eventually rolled to the side, pulling her against him so her head rested on his chest. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That was," Ai-Fi started, then trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Unprofessional," Jae-hoon supplied. "Ill-advised, potentially catastrophic for both our careers." I was going to say incredible, but sure, all those things too. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. You're not what I expected, Ifyenwa Adelek. What did you expect? Someone more guarded, more afraid. But you're fearless, aren't you? Underneath all that professionalism and duty, you're absolutely fearless. Ifi propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. His hair was mussed, his expression relaxed in a way she hadn't seen before. He looked younger, more human. I'm terrified, she admitted. Of everything. Of failing, of succeeding, of disappointing people, of being disappointing. But I learned a long time ago that being afraid and being brave aren't opposites. They're partners. Wise words. Jaehoon's hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Stay tonight. Don't rush back to your apartment and your phone full of angry messages from your father. Stay here in this bubble for just a few more hours. Tomorrow we can return to reality. But tonight... Tonight I'm just Ifi, she finished. And you're just Jaehoon. No audits, no corporate politics, no expectations. Exactly. So she stayed. They ordered room service at midnight, burgers and fries and champagne, eating while wrapped in the hotel's plush robes and laughing about ridiculous things. Jaehoon told her about his failed attempt to learn piano, and she told him about the time she accidentally crashed her father's car into a fence and blamed it on Emeka. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in years, Ifi didn't dream about spreadsheets or disappointed fathers or failing companies. She just slept, deeply and peacefully, wrapped in the arms of a man who saw her for exactly who she was. Morning came too quickly. Ifi woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. Jaehoon was already awake, showered and dressed in a fresh suit, standing by the window with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean. His body language was tense, all the relaxation from last night evaporated. She watched him for a moment, reality crashing back. What had they done? What had she done? She'd slept with the man auditing her company, potentially compromising the most important business deal of her life. Her father would be furious. Emeka would use this as ammunition. The Korean investors might think she'd tried to seduce her way to a favorable recommendation. As if sensing her spiraling thoughts, Jaehoon turned and saw her awake. His expression softened immediately. He said something final in Korean and ended the call. Good morning, he said, bringing her a cup of coffee. I wasn't sure how you take it, so I made it strong with a little sugar. That's perfect. Ifi accepted the cup gratefully, using it to warm her hands and give her something to do. That phone call sounded intense. His jaw tightened. Work issue, nothing to concern you. Something in his tone sent a chill down her spine. Jaehoon, what's wrong? He sat down on the edge of the bed, his face carefully neutral. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. Last night, after dinner, did you access any of my devices? My laptop, my phone, anything? What? No, of course not. Ifi set down her coffee cup. Why would I? Because someone did. His voice was cold now, professional. The warmth from last night had vanished like morning mist. Sometime between midnight and 6 a.m., someone accessed the secure transaction account I use for Jumdo investments, an account that only 3 people in the world have access codes for, and $500,000 was transferred out. Ifi's blood turned to ice. $500,000. From the account we were going to use to invest in your company, and the transfer. He pulled out his laptop, fingers flying over the keys, then turned the screen toward her. The transfer was initiated from your terminal, your computer at Adelek Logistics, your login credentials, your digital signature authorizing the transaction. That's impossible. Ifi's voice came out as a whisper. I was here with you all night. I know. For a moment, his mask slipped and she saw conflict in his eyes. Which means either you did this before dinner and set it on a timer, or someone else has access to your credentials. You think I stole from you? Ifi's voice rose, sharp with betrayal. Last night, everything we shared, you think that was some elaborate con to rob you. I don't know what to think. Jaehoon stood up, packing like a caged animal. My instincts say you're not capable of this. The woman I was with last night, the woman who opened up to me, who trusted me, she wasn't acting. I'd stake my life on it, but the evidence... Evidence can be faked, Ifi said desperately, her mind racing through possibilities. Someone could have accessed my computer. Emeka has emergency access to all company systems, or my father, or... Why would they do that? What's the motive? To sabotage the deal? Ifi was fully awake now, fury and fear mixing into something caustic. If the Korean investment falls through, my father gives the company to Emeka immediately. Don't you see? This is exactly what someone would do if they wanted to discredit me and torpedo the partnership. Jae-hoon wanted to believe her. She could see it in the way his hands clenched and unclenched, in the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. I have to report this to Mr. Kang, to Jumdo Group. There will be an investigation, police, possibly Interpol since it crosses international jurisdictions. Police, Ifi felt the world tilting. Jae-hoon, you can't. I don't have a choice. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were anguished. If I don't report this, I'm complicit. And if I'm complicit, I lose everything I've built. My reputation, my position, possibly my freedom. I'm sorry, Ifyinwa. I'm so sorry, but I have to do this. He made a call, spoke in Korean again. Ifi didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Official, cold, final. She stood up, wrapping the hotel robe tighter around herself like armor. After last night, after everything we shared, you're going to destroy me based on a digital trail that any competent hacker could fake. I'm not destroying you. I'm following the evidence. You're choosing money over truth. I'm choosing survival over sentiment. His voice hardened. Welcome to the real world, Miss Adelek, where feelings don't matter and evidence wins. I told you last night I'd done things I wasn't proud of. This is one of them. But I'll do it anyway because that's who I am. I'm sorry you had to learn that this way. There was a knock at the door. Hotel security, probably, or worse, actual police. Ifi felt paralyzed, unable to move, unable to process what was happening. Jae-hoon walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, he said quietly, not looking at her, last night was real. Everything I said, everything I felt, it was all real. And I'll regret this for the rest of my life, but I'll do it anyway. He opened the door. And Ifi's world ended in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Kirakiri prison smelled like despair. Ifi sat on a concrete bench in a holding cell that was barely large enough for 3 people, but currently housed 7. The other women, arrested for everything from petty theft to prostitution, gave her curious looks. Her burgundy dress from last night was wrinkled, makeup smeared, hair tangled. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman whose life had imploded in the space of a morning. The arrest had been humiliatingly public. Hotel security had escorted her through the lobby in handcuffs while guests stared and whispered. Outside, a crowd of reporters had been waiting. Someone had tipped them off, ensuring maximum damage to her reputation. The headlines were already writing themselves. Adelek heiress arrested for international fraud. Harvard MBA becomes common thief. Female executive seduces and steals from Korean investors. That last one stung the most, because it weaponized her gender and her choices into a narrative of feminine deception. She hadn't just stolen, she'd used her sexuality to do it. Never mind that she was innocent. Never mind that someone had set her up. In the court of public opinion, she'd already been convicted. The police had processed her with bureaucratic indifference. Fingerprints, photographs, a humiliating search. They'd taken her phone, her jewelry, her shoes. Then they'd thrown her in this cell to wait for her father to post bail. If he posted bail. Hours crawled by. The cell grew hotter as the day progressed, the air thick and stifling. One woman vomited in the corner. Another cried continuously, a keening sound that scraped against Ifi's nerves. Ifi sat perfectly still, her mind cycling through the same questions on an endless loop. Who had accessed her computer? Who had the technical knowledge to fake her credentials? Who wanted the Korean deal to fail badly enough to commit international fraud? The answer kept circling back to one person, but she couldn't make herself believe it. Emeka was lazy, entitled, jealous. But was he capable of this? of destroying his own sister to secure his inheritance. Adelic, a guard's voice rang out. You made bail, let's go. Ifi stood on shaking legs and followed the guard through a maze of corridors, each one more depressing than the last. They returned her belongings in a manila envelope. Her phone had dozens of missed calls, her father, Emeka, news outlets, blocked numbers. She turned it off without listening to any messages. Outside, a black Mercedes waited, not her father's car, not Emeka's flashy BMW. Jaehoon's car. The back door opened and he stepped out, his expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses. Get in. You. Ifi's voice was hoarse from hours of not speaking. You arrested me and now you're rescuing me. Get in the car, Ifyinwa. We can argue while driving, but standing here makes you a target for photographers. He was right. She could already see phones being raised, cameras pointed their direction. So she got in the car, hatting herself for accepting his help, but too exhausted to refuse. Jaehoon slid in beside her, and the car pulled away from the prison with smooth efficiency. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jaehoon removed his sunglasses, and Ifi saw that he looked as wrecked as she felt, shadows under his eyes, jaw tight with tension. I paid your bail, he said quietly, and I had you released into my custody pending investigation. You're staying with me. Excuse me. House arrest, essentially. My lawyers argued that since the theft was from my company, I have a vested interest in ensuring you don't flee the country. The judge agreed. So until this is resolved, you're confined to my residence in Ikoyi. You're keeping me prisoner. I'm keeping you safe. He finally looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. Do you know what your father did when he heard about the arrest? Ifi's stomach clenched. Tell me. He held a press conference, disowned you publicly, said you'd always been difficult and ambitious, and that he should have known you'd eventually disgrace the family name. He apologized to Jumdo Group and announced that your brother Emeka would be taking over as CEO immediately, effective today. The words hit like physical blows. Ifi had expected disappointment, maybe anger, but public disownment? Her father had chosen family reputation over his daughter without even hearing her side of the story. He didn't even ask if I did it, she whispered. No, Jaehoon's jaw tightened. He assumed your guilt and used it to justify what he wanted to do anyway, give the company to his son. Your arrest was convenient, possibly even welcome. Then why am I in your custody instead of my father's? Why would you? Because I don't think you did it. Jaehoon's voice was fierce now, the professional mask cracking. I spent the entire morning reviewing the transaction logs. The transfer was sophisticated, multiple proxy servers, encrypted routing, professional-grade money laundering techniques. This wasn't some desperate embezzlement scheme. This was planned by someone with serious technical knowledge and resources. So you believe me? I believe the woman I was with last night wasn't acting. I believe your shock this morning was genuine, and I believe someone set you up. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. But believing you and proving your innocence are different things. Right now, all the evidence points to you. So until I find the real thief, you stay with me where I can protect you. From the police, from the media, and from whoever did this. The car pulled up to a modern compound in Ikoyi. High walls, security cameras, armed guards at the gate. Not a hotel suite this time, but Jaehoon's actual residence. As they walked inside, Ifi noticed details that revealed more about him than any conversation. Minimalist furniture, a wall of books in multiple languages, expensive artwork that suggested sophisticated taste. This wasn't just a rich man's house. This was a fortress built by someone who understood the value of security. Guest room is upstairs, Jaehoon said, his tone carefully neutral. Bathroom attached. I'll have clothes sent over from your apartment. My security team will need your keys and building access. So I really am a prisoner. You're a guest under protective custody. He met her eyes. And before you argue, consider the alternative. Your father has made you a pariah. Your brother is likely celebrating. The media has convicted you. If you were alone right now in your apartment with no support and no protection, how long do you think you'd survive? A day? A week? I'm giving you time and space to clear your name. Accept the gift, Ifyinwa. He was right, and she hated it. Hated being dependent on him. Hated that the man who'd shared her bed last night was now her jailer. But mostly, she hated that despite everything, part of her still wanted to trust him. Fine, she said, but I'm not sitting idle while you investigate. I'm starting my own firm. If Adelic Logistics doesn't want me, I'll build something better. For the first time that day, Jae-hoon smiled. There she is, the woman who doesn't know how to quit. Good, channel that fury into something productive. Show your father and your brother what they threw away. 3 weeks later. Ify had transformed Jae-hoon's guest room into a command center. Laptop, tablets, stacks of business registration documents, and a whiteboard covered with potential client names. She'd registered Phoenix Financial Consulting using borrowed money from Jae-hoon, a loan she meticulously documented and planned to repay. She designed a website, created marketing materials, and started cold calling every contact in her network. Most calls ended with polite excuses or immediate hang-ups. Her reputation was toxic, but a few small businesses, desperate or brave enough to look past the scandal, agreed to consultations. She took every job, no matter how small, working 16-hour days to rebuild credibility one spreadsheet at a time. Jae-hoon watched her with something like admiration. He'd set up his own operation in the dining room, laptops, monitors, and a team of forensic accountants working to trace the stolen money. The investigation was painstaking, following digital breadcrumbs through shell companies and cryptocurrency exchanges, dead-ending at VPN routes that scrambled the trail. Whoever did this is good, Jae-hoon admitted one evening over dinner. They'd fallen into a strange domestic routine, sharing meals, comparing notes on their respective work, carefully not discussing the night they'd spent together. Every time we get close, the trail goes cold. They're using sophisticated tools to cover their tracks. Sophisticated tools cost money, Ify observed. Serious money. The kind of money someone would need if they'd just stolen $500,000. Exactly what I was thinking. Jae-hoon pulled up a financial analysis on his tablet. I've been monitoring unusual purchases by anyone connected to Adelic Logistics. Large transactions, luxury items, anything that suggests sudden wealth. And nothing from your father, his spending patterns are consistent, nothing from company executives, but, he hesitated. Your brother purchased a Range Rover last week, paid cash, $85,000. Ify's blood ran cold. Emeka doesn't have that kind of money. His salary is $60,000 a year, and he spends every naira on clubbing and designer clothes. I know, which means he got it somewhere else. Jae-hoon's eyes were hard. I'm having my team dig deeper into his finances. If he's the thief, we'll find proof. But Ify couldn't believe it, wouldn't believe it. Emeka was weak and entitled, but this, framing his own sister for international fraud, that required malice she couldn't reconcile with the brother she'd grown up with, the one who'd once cried when she'd gotten into Harvard, saying he was proud of her. Then again, people changed, especially when inheritance and power were at stake. Her phone rang, a client miraculously. Excuse me, she told Jae-hoon, stepping into the hallway. It was Emeka. Ify, his voice was slurred, drunk. Sister, my dear, brilliant sister. What do you want, Emeka? I wanted to say, I'm sorry about everything, about Dad disowning you, about the company, about... He trailed off. I found something, evidence, about who really stole the money. I need to give it to you. Can you meet me? Ify's heart raced. What evidence? Not over the phone. Too dangerous. There's a warehouse near Apapa Port, the old Adelic storage facility we stopped using 5 years ago. Meet me there tonight. 10 p.m. I'll bring everything. We can fix this, Ify. We can clear your name. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, but hope was a powerful drug. And Ify was desperate. I'm under house arrest. I can't just leave. Then figure it out. This is your one chance to prove your innocence. 10 p.m., Ify. Don't tell anyone. If Dad finds out I'm helping you, he'll destroy me too. The line went dead. Ifai stood in the hallway, mind racing. This could be legitimate, Emeka, guilty and drunk, trying to make amends. Or it could be a setup. Either way, she had to know. She waited until Jae-hoon was absorbed in his work, then slipped out through the kitchen. His security was good, but not perfect. She'd been observing patterns for weeks. The guards changed shifts at 9:45 p.m., leaving a 3-minute window. She took an Uber, paying cash, and gave an address 2 blocks from the warehouse. The Apapa Port District at night was Lagos at its most dangerous. Dark streets, abandoned buildings, and the kind of silence that suggested predators. The old Adelec warehouse loomed ahead, windows broken, weeds growing through cracked pavement. Ifai's phone buzzed. "Jae-hoon, where are you?" She silenced it and pushed open the warehouse door. "Emeka," her voice echoed in the cavernous space. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, illuminating stacks of old pallets and rusted equipment. "Emeka, I'm here." Footsteps behind her. She spun around. 4 men emerged from the shadows, hired muscle, their faces hard and expressionless. And behind them, stepping into the light with a bottle of Hennessy in one hand and madness in his eyes, was her brother. "Hello, sister," Emeka said, his voice no longer slurred. He'd been acting. "Thank you for coming. This is going to be so much easier than I thought." "Emeka, what?" "You ruined everything." The words exploded out of him, years of resentment finally erupting. "Do you know what it's like? Being the son, the heir, the one whose supposed asterisk to inherit, but everyone knows you're not good enough. Dad looks at me and sees disappointment. He looks at you and sees his legacy. Even when he gave me the company, he did it because you embarrassed him, not because I earned it. So you framed me." Ifai's voice was steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "You stole the money, set me up for international fraud." "I had to." Emeka's laugh was unhinged. "You were going to save the company, make it profitable, prove once again that you were better than me. I couldn't let that happen, so I found a hacker, a good one, cost me $50,000 of the stolen money, and had him access your terminal while you were busy seducing the Korean accountant. Worked perfectly. You got arrested, Dad disowned you, and I finally got what should have been mine from the beginning." "You're insane." "I'm practical," he gestured to the thugs. "And now I'm cleaning up loose ends. You're going to have a tragic accident tonight, Ifai. Despondent over your arrest and disgrace, you came to this abandoned warehouse and took your own life. Very sad, very believable." One of the thugs pulled out a rope. Ifai's paralysis broke and she ran, but they were faster. Hands grabbed her, lifted her struggling body, began tying her wrists. Emeka watched with glassy eyes, his face a mask of satisfaction and self-loathing. "I'm sorry it has to be this way," he said, but he didn't sound sorry. He sounded relieved. "You were always the better one, Ifai, but better doesn't matter if you're dead." Then from the darkness, a voice like ice, "Put her down." Jae-hoon stepped into the moonlight, and he looked nothing like the accountant or the gentle lover. He moved like violence incarnate, precise, controlled, and absolutely lethal. Behind him, 3 men in black tactical gear materialized from the shadows. The thugs dropped Ifai and reached for weapons, but Jae-hoon's team moved faster. The fight was over in seconds, brutal, efficient, professional. Within moments, all 4 hired muscle were on the ground, subdued and zip-tied. Jae-hoon walked past them like they didn't exist, his eyes locked on Emeka. "You made a mistake," he said softly. "You hurt someone under my protection. You framed someone I care about, and you made me doubt her even for a moment. Those are expensive mistakes." Emeka scrambled backward, the bottle falling from his hands and shattering. "You can't touch me. I'm CEO of Adelec Logistics, my father." "Your father will disown you the moment I show him the evidence." Jae-hoon pulled out a phone. "This conversation, recorded, your confession, documented, the hacker you hired, already in custody and very eager to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. You're finished, Emeka. The only question is whether you go to the police willingly or whether I make you." Jae-hoon moved to untie Ifai, his hands gentle despite the violence he'd just unleashed. "Are you hurt?" "No," Ifai's voice shook. "How did you find me?" I tracked your phone the moment I realized you were gone. Did you really think I'd keep you under house arrest without surveillance? He helped her stand, his arms supporting her weight. You could have told me about the meeting. I would have come with you. I didn't know if I could trust you. And now? Ifai looked at the man who'd arrested her, imprisoned her, and then saved her life. The man who'd hurt her and protected her in equal measure. Now I think trust is complicated, but I'm grateful you were here. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Jai-hoon's team had called them. Emeka sat on the ground, his face buried in his hands, all his bravado evaporated. He looked small, pathetic, a man who destroyed his sister because he couldn't live with his own inadequacy. I'll testify, Ifai said quietly. Against him, against anyone involved, I want justice. You'll get it, Jai-hoon's voice was a promise. All charges against you will be dropped by morning, your name will be cleared, and Emeka, he looked at her brother with cold contempt. He'll spend the next 20 years learning that actions have consequences. 8 months later, Phoenix Financial Consulting occupied a small but prestigious office in Victoria Island. The view wasn't as good as Adelec Logistics, but it was asteriskers asterisk, built from nothing, earned through talent and relentless work. Ifai's client list had grown from desperate small businesses to mid-sized companies genuinely impressed by her expertise. She'd become the success story everyone wanted, the woman who'd been knocked down and built herself back up. Chief Adelec had tried to reach out after Emeka's arrest, tearful apologies, requests for forgiveness, pleas for her to return to the company. Ifai had listened politely, then declined. Some bridges once burned couldn't be rebuilt, and truthfully, she didn't want them rebuilt. She was happier now, free from the crushing weight of his expectations. At home, the small apartment she'd rented once house arrest ended, Ifai stood in the nursery, assembling a crib with questionable success. The instructions were in Swedish or possibly an ancient curse. She'd gotten halfway through before realizing she'd installed the base upside down. You're doing it wrong. She turned to find Jai-hoon standing in the doorway, holding takeout bags and wearing a soft smile. I'm doing it creatively, Ifai corrected. Very Swedish, very modern. Very backwards. He set down the food and took the screwdriver from her hands. Let me. They worked together in comfortable silence, the kind that came from months of slowly rebuilt trust. After Emeka's arrest, Jai-hoon had given Ifai space. No pressure, no expectations. But he'd also been present, helping her launch Phoenix Financial, connecting her with clients, being a friend when she needed one and backing off when she needed space. And when she discovered she was pregnant, a remnant of their one night together, he'd stood outside her apartment for 3 hours after she'd told him, processing. Then he'd knocked on her door and said simply, I want to be a father, not a mafia lord, not a corporate fixer, just a father, if you'll let me. She'd let him. There, Jai-hoon stepped back from the completed crib. Structurally sound, no Swedish curses required. Show off, Ifai smiled, then grew serious. Jai-hoon, I need to ask you something. Anything. Are you really out? Of the syndicate, the dangerous business, all of it? He met her eyes steadily. I'm legitimizing everything. Selling the dangerous assets, restructuring the legal businesses, building something clean. It's slow and it's expensive, but yes, I'm out. For her. He placed his hand gently on Ifai's swollen belly. For both of you, I spent my life building power through fear and violence. Now I want to build a life through love and family, if you'll have me. I'll have you, Ifai said softly. Not because I need you. I've proven I don't need anyone to succeed. But because I want you. The real you, not the masks you wear for everyone else. Jai-hoon pulled her into his arms carefully, mindful of her pregnant belly. The real me loves you, Ifyenwa Adelec, has loved you since the moment you solved my trap question during the audit and looked at me like I was a worthy opponent instead of an obstacle. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again. That's a good speech, Ifai said against his chest. Very romantic, but you're still helping me with 3 a.m. feedings. Obviously, I'm competent at many things. Diaper changes, bottle warming, lullaby singing. You sing. Terribly, but with great conviction. Ifi laughed, and it felt like freedom. She'd lost her father's company, but gained her own empire. She'd been betrayed by her brother, but found a partner who saw her completely. She'd been arrested, disgraced, and publicly humiliated, and had risen from those ashes to build something better than anything she could have inherited. Outside the window, Lagos glittered in the evening light, chaotic, beautiful, impossible, just like her life. Just like the future stretching ahead, uncertain but entirely her own. And in Jaehoon's arms, their daughter kicking gently between them, Ifi finally understood what her Harvard professors had never taught her. That sometimes the most powerful thing you could build wasn't a business empire or a family legacy. Sometimes the most powerful thing you could build was a life that was authentically, unapologetically, triumphantly yours. So that's how Ifi went from arrested and disgraced to building her own empire and finding real love. But I want to hear from you. What would you do if you discovered your family member betrayed you for money? A. Forgive them and try to rebuild the relationship. B. Cut them off completely and never look back. C. Get revenge and make them pay. Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe for more dramatic stories of strong women who refuse to stay down. We post new stories every week, and trust me, the next one is even more intense. See you in the next video. Sparkles.